All right, folks, always a pleasure to welcome in our next guest, Fox News contributor, and, of course, 8 years at the United Nations as a spokesman and advisor, 4 U.S. UN ambassadors. We welcome in Richard Grenell. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Always my pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you. Okay, so this deal, I mean, the more you see, the worse it gets. There's one analysis now says that there's another devil in the detail of how Iran's nuclear deal could allow them to have off-site reactor work. This on top of the fact that we've heard the foreign minister of Iran say, we could keep enriching uranium. It's in the agreement. And Kerry says, oh, no, you can't. I mean, this whole thing is farcical.
Yeah, and we knew that the language on whether or not Iran could continue enriching was a problem. And matter of fact, Steve, it really was one of the sticking points. The solution that the Obama administration came up with was to write language that was very nebulous, that was very vague, and it solved both of the problems. It was a language enough where the Iranians could say, we win, we get to enrich, and the Americans could say, we win, and they don't get to enrich. We're not explicitly saying it. We knew that this was going to be a problem. We wrote this language. The United States wrote and approved this language as a face-saving device. And basically what they did, and this happens in diplomacy, is when you want a solution, when you're so desperate for a solution, you write language that both sides can kind of claim victory on. The problem is that this is a very important point. Whether or not Iran gets to enrich uranium is an incredibly important point. It's not something that you act politically about. This is a negative language. It's also interesting, Steve, that this whole deal was done in Geneva outside of the auspices of the UN. And the reason why is because in 2006, when John Bolton put forward the first resolution that said Iran must stop enriching uranium, that United Nations Security Council resolution, that the first one that passed in 2006, and then 6 subsequent resolutions after that, all are perfectly clear. It says Iran must stop enriching all uranium. It says all. You get to enrich 0.
Right.
The reason why the Obama team came forward and tried to do new negotiations outside of the UN in Geneva is because the Iranians didn't like that resolution. So we decided to weaken it. So Obama being weaker than the UN is a huge problem and signal to the rest of the world.
Richard, you represented and were a spokesman and advisor to 4 great U.S. ambassadors to the United Nations. You worked under George W. Bush. And when you see what's going on now, when you look at this agreement and the context of everything else that's gone on foreign policy-wise, what do you? I mean, it's got to bother and eat at you more than it's bothering and eating at me, and it's tearing me up.
Yeah, I mean, the problem here is that, the Obama administration doesn't have a strategy. Their strategy is just to do, whatever George Bush didn't do. And so they very much play politics with our national security. I'm very uncomfortable when an administration official says things like, well, what else can we do? We don't want to go to war. Well, first of all, if you're the leader of the greatest country in the world and you're in charge of our national security, you actually don't say things like that. You don't turn national security into a political issue by saying, you know what, we just don't want to go to war, so we're going to take that off the table because politically our people don't want to go to war. So no matter what happens, we're not going to go to war. That's being just as political and manipulative towards war as it is to say we're going to march to war and go to war all the time. I just don't want leaders who feel like a public opinion poll is something to take when
it comes to national security.
Security.
Absolutely. Let me ask you one more, Rich. And that is 3 Americans that we know are being held, including, of course, the pastor Saeed Abedini. And you would think since these talks and we now have been going on for maybe a year, and we didn't know about it, then they tried to orchestrate it, that it just sprung up when Obama couldn't shake the president's hand at the UN. Anyway, you think they would have released one of them, gotten something out of this. But as far as we know, those Americans are just forgotten.
Yeah, well, I work on the Amir Hekmati case, who is the U.S. Former military gentleman who is now in prison in Tehran. And the Iranians won't talk about this issue, but yet they're claiming to be a new moderate administration. Look, the simple fact is, other than Rouhani's tweets, he has not changed a single behavior in Iran. However, the United States is now rewarding them with $7 billion in cash and sanctions relief, despite the fact that they haven't moved one iota in their behavior.
And plus, of course, it's the Ayatollahs that control that country. You got to get permission from them to run. So this moderate, like you said, it's all based on, oh, look, he tweets. He must be a good guy. Hey, Rich, we'll have you back soon. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Take care. That's Rich Grenell, ladies and gentlemen, political consultant, former U.S. spokesman at the United Nations for 4 U.S. ambassadors to that body, and Fox News contributor.